Hey, today I wanted to have a reading from one of the books I'm reading currently. I'm really enjoying it. It's called The Way of Kings, part of the series called The Stormlight Archives. It's a high fantasy book. It had a lot of really good distinct moments throughout, and I just wanted to share one of those here and hopefully encourage others to read it. So, without further ado, although I must say, spoilers. This is a pretty big revelation in the book, so if you're planning on reading it, I suggest just foregoing and waiting until you've read it. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy. As the high storm hit in force, Dalinar felt the vision coming on. He closed his eyes, letting it take him. He had a decision to make, a responsibility. What to do? These visions had lied to him, or at least misled him. It seemed that he couldn't trust them, at least not as explicitly as he once had. He took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and found himself in a place of smoke. He turned about, wary. The sky was dark, and he stood on a field of dull, bone-white rock, jagged and rough, extending in all directions, off into eternity. Amorphous shapes made of curling gray smoke rose from the ground, like smoke rings, only in other shapes. Here, a chair. There, a rock bud, with vines extended, curling to the sides and vanishing. Beside him appeared the figure of a man in uniform, silent and vaporous, rising lethargically towards the sky, mouth open. The shapes melted and distorted as they climbed higher, though they seemed to hold their forms longer than they should. It was unnerving, standing on the eternal plain, pure darkness above, smoke figures rising all around. It wasn't like any vision he'd seen before. It was... No, wait. He frowned, stepping back as the figure of a tree burst from the ground close to him. I have seen this place before. In the first of my visions, so many months ago. It was fuzzy in his mind. He'd been disoriented, the vision vague, as if his mind hadn't learned to accept what it was seeing. In fact, the only thing he remembered distinctly was...
You must unite them.
A strong voice boomed. Was the voice speaking to him from all around, causing the smoke figures to fuzz and distort. Why did you lie to me? Dalinar demanded of the open darkness. I did what you said, and I was betrayed.
Unite them. The sun approaches the horizon. The Everstorm comes. The true desolation. The night of sorrows.
I need answers, Dalinar said. I don't trust you any longer. If you want me to listen to you, you'll need to... The vision changed. He spun about, finding that he was still on an open plain of rock, but the normal sun was in the sky. The stone field looked like an ordinary one on Rashar. It was very odd for one of the visions to set him in a place without others to talk to and interact with, though, for once, he wore his own clothing, the sharp blue Kalen uniform. Had this happened before, the other time he'd been in that place of smoke? Yes, it had. This was the first time he'd been taken to a place where he'd been before. Why? He carefully scanned the scenery. Since the voice didn't speak to him again, he began to walk, passing cracked boulders and broken bits of shale, pebbles, and rocks. There were no plants, not even rock buds. Just an empty landscape filled with broken stones. Eventually, he came to spot a ridge. Getting to high ground felt like a good idea, though the hike seemed to take hours. The vision did not end. Time was often odd in these visions. He continued to hike up the side of the rock formation, wishing he had his shard plate to strengthen him. Finally at the top, he walked over to the edge to look down below. And there he saw Kholinar, his home, the capital city of Alethkar. It had been destroyed. The beautiful buildings had been shattered. The wind blades were cast down. There were no bodies, just broken stone. This wasn't like the vision he had seen before, with Noadon. That wasn't the Kholinar of the distant past. He could see the rubble of his own palace. But there was no rock formation like the one he stood on near Kholinar in the real world. Always before, these visions had showed him the past. Was this now a vision of the future?
I cannot fight him any longer,
The voice said. Dalinar jumped, glancing to the side. A man stood there. He had dark skin and pure white hair. Tall, thick of chest, but not massive. He wore exotic clothing of a strange cut. Loose, billowing trousers, and a coat that came down only to his waist. Both seemed made of gold. Yes, this very thing had happened before, in his very first vision. Dalinar could remember it now. "Who are you?" Dalinar demanded. "Why are you showing me these visions?"
You can see it there.
The figure said, pointing.
If you look closely, it begins in the distance.
Dalinar glanced in that direction, annoyed. He couldn't make out anything specific. "Storm it," Dalinar said. "Won't you answer my questions for once? What is the good of all this if you just speak in riddles?" The man didn't answer. He just kept pointing. And yes, something was happening. There was a shadow in the air, approaching. A wall of darkness. Like a high storm, only wrong. "At least tell me this," Dalinar said. "What time are we seeing? Is this the past? The future? Or something else entirely?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Then he said,
You're probably wondering if this is a vision of the future.
Dalinar started. I just asked. This was familiar. Too familiar. "You said that exact thing last time," Dalinar realized, feeling a chill. "This all happened. I'm seeing the same vision again." The figure squinted at the horizon.
I cannot see the future completely. Cultivation, she is better at it than I. It's as if the future is a shattering window. The further you look, the more pieces that window breaks into. The near future can be anticipated. With the distant future, I can only guess.
"You can't hear me, can you?" Dalinar asked, feeling a horror as he finally began to understand. "You never could." "Blood of my fathers. He's not ignoring me. He can't see me. He doesn't speak in riddles. It just has seemed that way because I took his responses as cryptic answers to my questions. He didn't tell me to trust Sadeas. I just assumed." Everything seemed to shake around Dalinar. His preconceptions, what he'd thought he'd known, the ground itself.
That is what could happen.
The figure said, nodding into the distance.
It's what I fear will happen. It's what he wants. The true desolation.
No, that wall in the air wasn't a high storm. It wasn't rain making that enormous shadow, but blowing dust. He remembered this vision in full now. It had ended here, with him confused, staring out at that oncoming wall of dust. This time, however, the vision continued. The figure turned to him.
I am sorry to do this to you. By now, I hope that what you've seen has given you a foundation to understand. But I can't know for certain. I don't know who you are, or how you found your way here.
What to say? Did it matter?
Most of what I show you are scenes I have seen directly.
The figure said.
But some, such as this one, are born out of my fears. If I fear it, then you should too.
The land was trembling. The wall of dust was being caused by something. Something approaching. The ground began to fall away. Dalinar gasped. The very rocks ahead were shattering, breaking apart, becoming dust. He backed away as everything began to shake, a massive earthquake accompanied by a terrible roar of dying rocks. He fell to the ground. There was an awful, grinding, terrifying moment of nightmare. The shaking, the destruction, the sounds of the land itself seeming to die. Then it was past. Dalinar breathed in and out before rising on unsteady legs. He and the figure stood on a solitary pinnacle of rock, a little section that, for some reason, had been protected. It was like a stone pillar a few paces wide, rising high into the air. Around it, the land was gone. Kholinar was gone. It had all fallen away into unplumbed darkness below. He felt vertigo, standing on the tiny bit of rock that, impossibly, remained. "What is this?" Dalinar demanded, though he knew that the being couldn't hear him. The figure looked about, sorrowful.
I can't leave much. Just these few images given to you, whoever you are.
These visions, they're like a journal, aren't they? A history you wrote. A book you left behind, except I don't read it. I see it. The figure looked into the sky.
I don't even know if anyone will ever see this. I am gone, you see.
Dalinar didn't respond. He looked over the sheer pinnacle, down at a void, horrified.
This isn't just about you, either.
The figure said, raising his hand into the air. A light winked out in the sky, one that Dalinar hadn't realized was there. Then another winked out as well. The sun seemed to be growing dimmer.
It's about all of them,
the figure said.
I should have realized he'd come for me.
Who are you? Dalinar asked, voicing the words to himself. The figure still stared into the sky.
I leave this because there must be something, a hope to discover, a chance that someone will find what to do. Do you wish to fight him?
Yes, Dalinar found himself saying, despite knowing that it didn't matter. I don't know who he is, but if he wants to do this, then I will fight him.
Someone must lead them.
I will do it, Dalinar said. The words just came out.
Someone must unite them.
I will do it.
Someone must protect them.
I will do it. The figure was silent for a moment. Then he spoke in a clear, crisp voice.
Life before death. Strength before weakness. Journey before destination. Speak again the ancient oaths and return to men the shards they once bore.
He turned to Dalinar, meeting his eyes.
The night's radiant must stand again.
I cannot comprehend how that can be done, Dalinar said softly. But I will try.
Men must face them together,
the figure said, stepping up to Dalinar, placing a hand on his shoulder.
You cannot squabble, as in times past. He's realized that you, given time, will become your own enemies. That he doesn't need to fight you. Not if he can make you forget, make you turn against one another. Your legends say that you won, but the truth is that we lost, and we are losing.
Who are you? Dalinar asked again, voice softer.
I wish I could do more,
repeated the figure in gold.
You might be able to get him to choose a champion. He is bound by some rules. All of us are. A champion could work well for you, but it is not certain. And without the Dawn Shards, well, I have done what I can. It is a terrible, terrible thing to leave you alone.
Who are you? Dalinar asked again. And yet, he thought he knew.
I was God, the one you call the Almighty, the creator of mankind.
The figure closed his eyes.
And now I'm dead. Odium has killed me. I am sorry.